Welcome to Kids Art with Lucca, the place to find fun and interesting kids art. Today we're going to do a leaf project, and I love when the leaves start falling. It's my favorite time. This is an easy project, but really bright and colorful, as you can see. Now what you need for materials are sponges, three different colors. I have yellow, red, and orange. You can make orange from the yellow and the red, mixing them together if you don't have orange. A glue stick, so you can put your trunk on. Just a piece of brown paper, or even a brown paper sack that you can tear for the trunk. And a piece of bright sky colored paper. You can use any shade of blue for the background. And the most important thing, corks of different sizes. I have some big ones and some small ones. First thing we're going to do is load our sponges. You want to make sure they're wet but wrung out, because then they absorb the paint better. So we're going to load a little bit of paint onto each sponge, and you need the right in the center. And then you're going to take the brush and you're going to load the sponge. And how you do that is you go back and forth towards the center. Try not to go too much off the edges, because then you just lose the paint. And you need quite a bit of paint in there or the cork won't pick it up. If it gets light, you just reload. I think that's probably enough to start with. Remember, you just go back and forth. And I usually turn the sponge around because it makes it easier to load. You can turn the plate around if you need to. Toward the center, back and forth. And what you don't realize is happening is that the paint is sinking into the sponge when you're doing this. That's what's really happening. So that one's pretty much loaded. And you don't want any of the paint sitting on top of the sponge, because then it'll make sort of spread out glob when you try to use it. My orange paint, this is a little thinner, so it's a little harder to load, and I think we're probably going to need more orange throughout since it's not as thick. Although if you want it, I'll show you a trick for mixing orange. Put a little bit of red, in case you don't have an orange paint. A lot of people just have the three basic colors, and yellow. And now just load them together, and it'll mix right into the orange. It's a little bit darker orange now. Okay, now our sponges are loaded, and I keep the brushes right beside because I might have to reload as I go. We're going to let that paint sink in a little bit while we tear our trunk. So your brown paper, you want to make a trunk that goes on here. And with tearing paper, it's pretty unpredictable. It might go any which way, but usually if you keep your two thumbs together, it'll help steer where you want it to be. And when you get to the middle of the paper, you just have to trust it's going to tear. But watch me put my two thumbs, and then I can turn the corner if I want to. See that? I can. As long as I have my thumbs where I want it to tear, it'll tear between. So you see where I'm trying to make the branch turn back again. So I keep my fingers together and I steer it like this. But I'll show you, mine might come apart too. If yours comes apart, just put them where you want them to be and glue them together. Because this is kind of a tricky thing to learn to do. It's a fun thing though, because once you do it, you can make all kinds of torn paper. So you can even use this part of the branch. Now I'm going to go back down. Okay, see how I put my fingernail down? You can do it that way too. Start right out here at the edge. Let me show that way again. Can you see my fingernail? Alright, so then I pull against it. I want a pretty thick trunk, so I'm going to let it thicken out at the bottom. Yeah, I like that. But I need a few more branches. So I'll just tear this up. If you want, you can just pull it apart like that. if you're having trouble using your fingers to steer it. And then what I'll do is I'll just glue these underneath wherever I want them to be. And move them around till they look good to you. All right, now take your glue stick, and the first thing you want to do is put your trunk down. But don't glue the whole trunk, then you can slide your branches under at the top. So I'm going to put this down here. I think off to one side is more interesting. All right, and then because I want to add these branches, I'm going to put them in first. See how you can just run the glue straight away from yourself? Glue sticks are actually easier to use than regular glue. You can use bottle glue if you want to. Now this one is over the top, so see how I ran it along the branch, and now I'm just going to put my finger down to pull it with it. Stick it on. Here's one more big branch I want to add. I'm trying to decide where it will be most interesting. I think maybe crossed under. I want it out to the side, I think. So I'm going to put it under here. See how I'm moving it around to make it look the way I want it to look? Yeah, I think there. So I'm going to take a little piece off and run it right out to the edge. Tuck it under so it looks as if it's growing out of the tree's center. Just the top of that. There are my branches. All right, there's my tree. I'm ready. I'm going to get rid of this paper for now so I can move my paint up where I need it. Now, you're going to take a big cork. I have several big corks, and then I have a few small corks. So what I like to do is have one big cork for each color and one small cork for each color. I think looks like I'll use another big one for that. All right, now, so I'm going to start with, I want the yellow to show, and it's going to pop out from the other. So I usually start with the darkest color, which will be the red one. And see what I'm doing with that? I just twist the cork onto it. In fact, I'm going to pull my brown paper back out and use it for the tester paper, the pieces that I've torn. See if I see how round it's coming out? So that's good, it's going to work well. Now, I think red leaves are all over the tree, so I just put them anywhere I'd like them to be. Keep loading your paint every time because you want it to be rich in color. And if they're a little off-centered, so not as round, that's all right, because leaves are not always symmetrical either, but it'll give the impression that there are leaves all over if you do that. Okay, gotten quite a few red, and sometimes at the end I add a few of that color again, just so the color will come through. I think that's probably enough red. Now I'm going to try the orange next. Oh, that's the small cork. That's all right. Put a few of the small ones around. I'm going to get a little more orange paint. I thought that would happen. Orange tends to be thinner, so I'm going to add a lot more in. Spread it into the sponge, like you did before when you loaded it. Take that cork. And the orange is showing up better on the brown branches. So I'm putting a few more of them around on the branches themselves. Now let's try the bigger cork for the orange. So we get some different shapes. Sizes, shapes. All right, now comes the glory of the yellow. So let's try the big one first. Put it right over the top, and it's all right if the color mixes a little. Because if you've ever noticed in the fall, The leaves are several different colors at once. Push it into the sponge each time. Looks like we need to even add a little yellow. Let's try that. Let's add a little bit more yellow. Actually, if you can do it, it might be a good thing to cut the sponge in half, because then it'll be using not quite so much paint when you load. Keeping some of them close together, like 2 or 3 yellow right close together, so that they look like they're growing in bunches. How's yours looking? Is it covered with leaves yet? And it's like, I put one up in the air there. That's all right. Makes it look like the tree's spread out a little more. And I think I'll finish up with a little more, with a little addition of some more red ones. I think it's plenty of yellow there. All right, let's try the red one more time, and I'm going to load just a little bit of color for the grand finale. In fact, I've just thought of something we should try. All right, let's put a little bit more red. That brightens it up a little. Now let's try, I just thought of something to try. Try loading the red, and then try loading the yellow on top of the red, and make a couple leaves that are double colored and see what happens. Makes it look like they're in the middle of turning. The color's turning. But you don't want to do that till the very end, otherwise your paint will be, your yellow will be contaminated. In fact, I'm getting more of an orange color from this. All right, I think that's good. Let's stop there. I'd love to see what you did. If you'd like to share your project, use the hashtag #WithLucca.